Yeah, excited to have Benjamin Merworth on Voices of Valor podcast here. He is the founder, owner, and practitioner at Functional Patterns Texas. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, man. It's been a long time coming. Y'all been pretty good to us, and it's pretty cool to come on and share some experiences and have a nice chat.
Absolutely. And they're here in Austin, Texas, which is why we're here today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about functional patterns?
So yeah, functional patterns is a training methodology that fundamentally just respects biology. We look at the training aspect of what is a priority, and you look at the human body. We just prioritize all the training around standing and walking and running and throwing, essentially reorganizing and redefining and sharpening the identifying characteristics of what it is to be human. Not that we can't do other athletic feats, but those are the priorities of how we navigate our training model. Based off of that, you can kind of look at the body and it moves three-dimensionally, right? The arms and legs move together, the torso and the spine, the pelvis all move together. When we look at that, they're connected by myofascial kinetic chains, essentially muscle systems that's connected with connective tissue that work in a very specific way. And we've looked at the maps, we've coded that out to individuals to help them out. And the byproduct is just them moving pain-free, ultimately feeling more competent and also confident about how to live their life and do day-to-day activities without having any fear or, I guess, limitations around what their body's really capable of doing.
Okay.
Kind of makes sense for the most part.
Yeah, so it's not just bench press, curls, go a little deeper into how the whole body connects holistically.
Yeah, the distinction of human biomechanics is just physics and human motion. We're just looking at it a very particular way, a very specific way, and there's not like a cookie cutter sheet for it. We actually understand how to put in all the variables, navigate them, and have a more scientific approach of, I guess, problem solving through the stuff that you want to improve. So if someone wants to lose weight, it shouldn't come at the cost of like blowing out your knees or your back.
Right.
If you want to be strong and want to run faster, it shouldn't come at the cost of having tightness or limitation in your joints, So we've just navigated the frontier of that for the past decade, and here we are in Austin, Texas, changing people's lives one step at a time.
You work with all athletes of all ages.
Yeah, general population, athletes, people that are pickleball connoisseurs, people that just want to be able to run with their dogs. We have dog agility professionals as well, people that love to throw that ultimate frisbee around, people who love to long distance marathon run or just hike out at the park, anything and everything in between. We pretty much are able to help out with any step of their journey, I guess.
Love it. How do you yourself kind of get into this functional patterns training methodology and the science behind it and everything?
Yeah, I was in college. I was studying kinesiology, exercise science, and about my senior year, the idea or the word or the thinking around fitness being functional or functional training just popped up out of nowhere. I didn't use YouTube or Google a lot. I tried to stay away from technology. I was like the last person I knew that ever got a smartphone. I still had the flip phone, and I didn't really want to spend time on the internet trying to get sucked into the abyss that is the internet. And I searched up functional training and came across functional patterns, and I was looking at it and it made sense out the gate. I just didn't know how to do it. So when I looked at the promo videos and the details of the education that they had on their YouTube, it just made sense. I wasn't learning a majority of that in college or in practice, and I always wanted to put my money where my mouth's at and apply the things that made sense. So when I started looking at this stuff, it made sense to apply functionality to people's bodies. It's just, how do you do it? Mm-hmm. And they were already just breaking the stigma and moving forward of being able to do it with results. It's like, hey, show me, don't tell me. Go ahead and put it into practice, yield results, get people moving effectively. And I guess cognitive dissonance and a little bit of an ego check. I was looking at this information thinking and saying, well, I could totally do this, but I don't really think I have the competence of understanding how to make someone else do this. And then speed up a few years after I graduated, moved to Austin about a decade ago, kept learning on it online, bought the online program, read the book they put out, and I had a mentor, and she was the only one in Texas. She took me through the first session, and I just backpedaled off of everything that I was doing and said, I'll do whatever you say. This makes sense. My body feels amazing, and I want to be able to help other folks do the same thing. And speed up 10 years later, I've got a portfolio on the phone I can just pull out for hours to show you the catalog of results that we've been able to do, not only personally, but as a company here in Austin, Texas. And man, that's a very rewarding feat that you get whenever you can take someone out of a scoliosis that they've had for 20, 30 years, or even someone who's had stiff knees their whole life and now they're able to play with their grandchildren or their dogs without limitation. That's more rewarding for the long term, knowing that in the next decade they're not going to be dealing with those issues like they had previously. So
Wow, that's powerful stuff. You mentioned going into this with those putting out the education, there might have been like a stigma. Is that just kind of when any innovation comes out, you kind of have to buck a trend? Like, is there something Functional Patterns believes that maybe 80% of the practitioners out there aren't keen to yet?
I would say back in the day of social media, when it started popping off in like 2014, 16, 18, it started becoming an avenue of how fitness professionals can make a living. Ultimately, fundamentally, I think our staff here in Texas and also collectively as Functional Patterns as an organization, we're just looking at results, keeping it objective, keeping it simple, and we just navigate the complexities to eventually get there. Most folks are willing to do the work. Some folks navigate the work completely different, and there's a bucket of folks that don't want to necessarily explore that kind of work, which speed up to a few years ago whenever we met with y'all, it just made sense to look at other tools in the shed that helps fine-tune doing the work necessary to get results. And some folks look at technology, some folks look at results, some folks look at the nuanced science that needs to be prioritized in the future that people don't think about. I guess the stigma just comes from limitation of innovation, maybe exploration, maybe just finding more drive of doing the work that people maybe not think of, or I don't really know. I guess it's just different for everyone in any field. But for us folks that actually do this and the folks that we have here in Texas, I guess the fire that keeps us lit is we know there's another layer, we know there's another page, and we know there's another person that's going to come with a complexity that's going to be based off of our ability to dig deep, to address a holistic thing they have there on their body with it's a pain, a limitation, or something complex and we never came across that needs to be addressed. If we don't dig deep, we're not going to be able to help them out. So I guess the eagerness to put in the work to do so is, I guess, tied into the education as well. Most folks just get certifications or they learn certain ideas and then they just stay in that bubble. That's completely fine. I guess we don't have a bubble, or maybe we're just reorganizing what that bubble might need to be. But ultimately, the passion of just learning and working hard for that client to get that result and that experience of being able to move pain-free and live pain-free is where that kind of lies. And I hope that answers your question in a few different ways.
So you see each person coming in kind of as like, what are their unique problems? How does their body all work together?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like if you came in and you said you wanted to be strong, in what context? Because what your body already has a predisposition to be strong in compared to another person that wants to be strong in a different context. Now, that's like apples and oranges. You have to take those fruits in a different application, right? One's going to be higher in vitamin C than the other. There's very specific, unique distinctions with every human. We just understand the fundamental principles of which to build that on. So that way, 5 years, 10 years from now, you're actually implementing that strength component that you're actually looking for that you never experienced outside of this.
Well, the average person's probably just wants to look good, feel good. Maybe they want to do a triathlon or a marathon. You deal with all those sort of things, it sounds like.
For sure, yeah. If someone comes in and they want to improve their long-distance performance, I have a handful of people that do marathons or long-distance running or even competitive racing. I guess with anything that moves forward, you always have to take a step back, maybe even like look in the mirror, or in this case, on camera or in technology, right? Looking at something objective that shows the concrete objective observation of what you're missing. Taking a step back allows you to reorganize how you can move forward if you want to keep pursuing that for the long term. So eventually, it's not just a short-term payoff. It's something that's sustainable for the long term. So that way you can happily go and do that physical activity and not have your body have a negative breakdown or a negative ROI from the exercise regimen or the strength training regimen you actually put into your practice.
Yeah. We met, a year and a half ago, more than that, maybe.
Right.
It's definitely a match made in heaven. Looking at your Instagram, a lot of videos of before and after, very impressive. And then now, you were one of the first places we rolled out Valor Vision with. Now you can even add objective numbers behind when they come in for their first assessment. Is that sort of how a patient comes in? Not patient, but an athlete. They come in, they do the Valor Vision assessment, and then you prescribe them tailored programming? within
Yeah,
the.
so whenever clients come on in, we've already been using before after analysis posturally and in the gait cycle. We use photo and video, and we map it to a standard that looks very effective for the long term, right? So if they come in, they're walking and the running looks like it needs some help, and they're dealing with back and knee pain, we can show them in 1 year the improvement, and they can observe it in real time. Valor came in and y'all were like, hey, y'all can observe that in real time with digestible data. So whenever the data report spits back information where they can objectively see that, hey, not only does our experience with an eye confirm what we're observing on the video, Valor Vision is a technological advancement that comes in that says, hey, it confirms that the hip flexion needed some work. Afterwards, it is showing that the work and the improvement is actually there. So just like with anything, right? If you were to embark in anything that you want improvement on, you would want something else to come in that is validating the experience or having an objective tracking measurement to know that in the end game, what you're doing, the work that you're putting in, and ultimately being able to share that with people has merit behind it versus just a conspiracy theory.
And so that's I guess, how has Valor Vision really had impact to your business, would you say?
I think the science behind it, I think since the pandemic, I think we could all collectively agree that people shifted their idea of health a little bit, whether they became neurotic about it, whether they became proactive about it, maybe they leveled it up. And maybe there were some people that were hesitant in the beginning to even embark on a health wellness experiment of any kind, having something like Valor or having people like us come in to show that it is possible to have a result no matter what stage of life you're at. Valor Vision was able to give another angle or a perspective or validation in the science realm that it's achievable. So when people come in, they're like, well, why should I worry about my posture? Why should I worry about the way that I move? I just want to feel good. Why should I care about the way that I walk or run? When we showcase in the way in the past 4 years with Valor Vision or before and after results on camera, the remarks that we hear from folks are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I looked like that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that needs some work. And being able to hear yourself say that kind of gives you a little subconscious kick in the rear saying, hey, I got to do something about this. But man, I have science and tech validating and observing this in real time that confirms that there needs to be some improvement. And there's this team of professionals that specialize in this stuff that are in my corner to make sure I have the tools equipped at my side to be able to move forward. I can actually make this happen. Wow. And the portfolio that we show them on our side, it's just normal folks like you and I. It's other folks that used to be athletes that want to keep that athletic propensity. It's also other folks that are like, hey, I want to feel athletic for the first time. I just don't know where to start and how to get there. Valor Vision's given us another a tool to give another perspective that it is achievable. That kind of makes sense.
It does. Because, I mean, people are motivated oftentimes like emotions or maybe pain, right?
Right.
But if you want to be proactive, seeing something like your Valor Vision assessment, that can also provide that logical kind of reason behind why I should do something like this, or am I actually getting better? Like
right.
Some fact and data behind it. I know for me, I do a lot of demos with our technology. I've actually found my right side with counter movement jumps, for example, is just stronger. Like you see a lot of takeoff and landing comes from that. And then me and Will were in the gym the other day. We're doing single leg stuff, and it translated. It's like my right leg is like, oh, perfect. Left leg, boom, weaker.
Yeah, to go off that point, that's exactly what we've observed in our practice, right? Someone's going to have a dominancy or a more preferred side to move from. That preferred side is probably going to be a little stronger or give you more metrics that are more greenlit on the Valor Vision profile.
Yeah.
When you look at that report and it showcases that, and we're not just telling the individual, hey, we observe this compensational movement tendency, or we know you favor one side versus the other. Hey, look, it shows up in your gait cycle. It just helps us fine-tune the alignment of moving forward on tackling that. And eventually that story and that emotion and that expression that eventually comes out is the person reflecting back like 7, 10, 20 years ago of like, well, could it be from like that one time when I did that thing and it messed that up and I was out for like a few months and I always favored that and that's why I always have this pain on this side. They start self-helping themselves, essentially problem-solving and fast-tracking their homework and direction they need to go into by using something with technology, using something like a professional, using something like a phone that helps them be like, oh, this is achievable. I just got to look at this, got to feel for it. The feeling confirms what I'm observing. Okay, I now want to address that. These folks know how to do so.
Yeah. Common question we get across the board, no matter who we're talking to, is what movements do I actually assess? It's like, great, Valor Vision can assess a host of movements. But for you guys with functional patterns, Texas, which movements are you most concerned about looking at?
So we look at gait, right? So the way that you walk, run, was fundamentally the priority. When we observe that, we can tell a lot out of the kinetic chain systems that work together or might not work completely together. Whenever that does happen, we map out the exercises that are based on that, moving forward and back as a priority. So our exercise selection is based off of that. So we have a step press cable exercise that is going to give up the correct data point that is observational on the gait. So say if I have you facing forward and you're moving forward and back with that cable press exercise, if you have a knee valgus on your left side and a knee varus on the right side, I can observe that the same way on the gait cycle, and it's going to give you a transparent, consistent data point on that. We also has it correct.
Yeah.
If we look at your arms and your legs moving together at a certain tempo or asymmetry, we can see that pop up in some pendulum swing exercises that we have with one arm and one leg. So if we're having you swing your arm with a dumbbell with the same leg or opposite leg, we could observe that same tendency in your gait cycle. So the exercise is just, I guess you could say the exercises not only are a assessment data point, but it also is like a backup safety protocol on our end of like, okay, are we having some cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias? Are we really just being pseudo? What's up with this? At the end of the day, it's always a mirror to match. We're pretty accurate with that.
So it all comes back to gait, walking, running. I know you're looking at your website, you're big on getting everyone to sprint. Is that fair to say?
I mean, when's the last time you ever had that feeling of, man, I sprinted or I ran as fast as I could and that felt great?
It certainly is a feeling like no other. And I actually don't know when the last time is.
Well, we can all agree is probably back when we were young.
Yeah.
Right? Younger, maybe when we were kids, maybe in our teens, maybe in our prime. That was like, I don't know, somewhere like 16 to 25. Or maybe we never experienced that at all. Maybe some folks have maybe that dopamine of, I love those long walks. I just feel refreshed. When you're able to give that to an individual with sprinting, it's rewarding to make them observe that it's possible, that they have no limitation or less pain or no pain doing it. Or maybe it's the first time they've ever experienced the ability of feeling their whole body work together to give them that experience, right? So say if you are an individual that walks and you love those long walks, but sometimes you feel a little stiff, or maybe sometimes your knees feel a little off.
Right.
Feeling your walking improve then can create an idea of, well, what could running feel like? Okay, you go for a run, 6 months into our program, you're like, wow, that feels really different. I feel like it's effortless or it's a little easy, but should it be difficult? Ultimately, the economy of locomotion, if these kinetic chains are working really good and really well, they should stand with the idea of running shouldn't be that difficult. You add that back into sprinting, you're like, wow, I can run explosively. That feels powerful. Again, with the economy of locomotion, these kinetic chains working really good, really well, or even better than they did before, it just unlocks that idea of like, well, what else is possible? So when we look at the gait cycle as being king or the priority, what we observe ultimately with everyone that comes in, they want to be able to walk with their kids, their dog. And there's folks that want to be able to continue doing pickleball, so they have to be explosive and run up and down the court.
Yeah.
There's other folks that want to continue being able to do their long distance runs because that's a thing that helps them clear the head. They want to be able to have these ideas that they do with physical activity be limitless, pain-free, and rewarding. So when we look at sprinting, testing that, you're able to see the full chassis of the body, give you real-time input of what's really working well and what's not, what still needs improvement, what's really a priority for the individual. And when they come into functional patterns Texas, the idea is making that an aligned opportunity of priority for them. So that way, when they're in their 80s, they're going to be glad looking back that they've prioritized functional patterns or gait cycle training as a priority rather than just bicep curls, for the girls,
yeah,
right?
Curls for the girls.
The idea of what you do for your body should be intentional, and there should be a purpose for it, and it should pay off in a way that is for the long term. So when we look at sprinting again, I know this is a short version of me explaining this to you.
I love it.
The gait cycle is key for longevity because that's what ultimately is the first thing that goes. People are no longer able to walk or run or do physical activity because it's limiting them in their capacity to actually move. Or even you'll see people say, I used to run, I used to sprint, I used to walk all the time, but now I have to find a different mode of cardiovascular fitness or a mode of transportation to get that fix on their body. They're just working around another compensation or a problem that just hasn't been addressed holistically that we've prioritized in our facility.
Right.
Ultimately, everyone that comes in, they want to be able to do that for their family, their friends, their dog, their cat, their turtle, their pet snail, whatever it is,
Well, it seems like over the last 10 years, we've found many rewarding case studies to, keep going, push into the future.
No, absolutely.
I always like to ask on the business side, because a lot of practitioners, they have their own businesses, or if they don't, they kind of have to get involved with the business side of things. Like, how did you actually start your business?
Yeah, so fitness professionals that start a gym ultimately want to be able to make an impact on people's lives. At least that was the intention from our group that when we started out, we had a previous setup and we switched the whole modeling into what we do now. When we did, we actually lost a handful, if not majority of our folks. We had to start from scratch. The priority was results. The idea is if we can get people to talk about their experience, showcase it,
Yeah.
show and tell, like we did back in elementary or kindergarten, right, was a very rewarding experience. Why do you think that is? It's because we love showing and telling the experiences that are positive. For example, if I went to the movies, I was like, hey, man, you got to go watch The Dark Knight. That was a great Batman movie by Christopher Nolan. The Joker was amazing. The storyline was just impeccable. And I've given you that point of reference with like a great spot that doesn't use seed oils in their food, cooks it from butter, and it's great protein-packed, delicious food. You're like, man, that's a great referral as well. If I told you, hey, you need to check out these shorts. They're water resistant. They're comfortable. They're made out of great material. You need to try these out. You're like, man, these feel comfortable. By the time I do this over the lifetime, imagine the power that you get being able to showcase your results and your experience in a health, wellness, physical setting, because without your health, you don't have anything, right? Mm-hmm. So if health is wealth, then what you do with your body should translate, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you're going to be referring this practice over. When you prioritize results, prioritizing a community that wants to focus around something for longevity in the long term, not just short-term gains of like, okay, can I get my PR on a squat, for example? Nothing wrong with that, right? Folks can do that if that's a priority for them. But when you look at the folks that come in, they're saying, hey, I'm able to do A, B, and C with my family now, and I wasn't able to do so. Or, hey, I was able to go on that long flight, and usually I'm debilitated the next day. Hey, I had a conference call with some investors, and usually my neck and my head is all tight and just compressed. I feel like these migraines build up after a meeting. Now you've mitigated that for them, and you've given some control and power back into how their bodies feel, and they have the results to back it up. That spreads like wildfire. Now you have a referral system within the fitness business, if you will, where people want to bring people in because not only do they feel good, they can observe that they look good or they're moving good, right? And ultimately, you want those people to experience the same thing. And before you know it, they're going to say, hey, you need to take the online program. Hey, you need to practice more time prioritizing these fundamental things because they help out. Hey, yeah, you have to think about your postural integration every single minute of the day. Hey, yeah, you have to come in. You have to experience the system they have Monday through Sunday. Hey, you have to come in, experience their whole team. Oh my gosh, they give different perspectives of what you didn't expect in a fitness program. It's just centralized again on the results. Not that other folks don't do that. It's just the priority for us has just worked top down like that. You spear point the results. You give all the supporting systems like technology, before and afters, looking at what their food intake is 6 months before, which it is now. They're able to give a Part Q assessment of like their feeling in the intake of what they experienced 1 year ago to 1 year later. All that is metric. All of it's data, all of it's objective, all of it's tangible. People love that as a results-oriented business.
It's very much word of mouth, showing the results, show and tell. That's kind of been your guys' strategy, and it's
for sure.
Probably picked up exponentially now.
Yeah, I think we've doubled, and we're going to continue doubling the size of our staff collectively. There's a large supply demand that we've been staying ahead of the curve on, and the more folks that we find for the right fit in our company, they just keep supplying and prioritizing humans, changing their life, and wanting to give them results as a priority. Man, like you have a strong like Navy SEAL Team 6 kind of approach where we could take folks with cerebral palsy, scoliosis, people that call us the day before and say, hey, this is a real example too. Hey, I'm about to have back surgery. I just found out about y'all. You're in my backyard. I will come in tomorrow. I'm willing to do the work. They come in, one session, 1 week, 1 month later, they're like, this has done more than anything I've done in the past 10 years dealing with this issue and pain. I'll do whatever you say. Man, that's rewarding. You can't find that anywhere else. And so our teams made that a priority for folks and made them understand like it's tangible. It's reasonable. It's just a lot of work. Again, you have to take a step back, take a look in the mirror, or with Valor technology, take a look at your phone, look at your posture, your gait cycle, the way that you are moving 3-dimensionally versus just bicep curls, for example.
Yeah.
And you're able to look at that person isn't the same person 6 months later.
So that person, they didn't go on to need back surgery, or is it just
Yes, currently right now, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, that example I gave you, he is a current client and he does not need back surgery. And don't know about you, back surgery is not a pretty penny. It's not an easy thing to just pull out of your pocket and dump down all at once. So I'm able to help him not to do that.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, there's many stories. I can go all day long, and so can our team. We have folks that were spending a lot of resources and time at other departments, if you will, of health wellness in those sectors. And eventually they came to us and we became a one-stop, last-stop shop. We take a holistic approach. We go deep in the layering of asking questions, problem solving, using the objective thinking analysis, and even the Socratic method to open up the prefrontal cortex, if you will, of objective critical thinking on what is a priority. Right? Most folks don't even think about them when they go into the gym. If they want to go work out, they're just like, I want to go in there and feel good.
Yeah.
And then the pains, the aches start sitting in. We start asking, what happens if you go into the gym to exercise and you want to feel good, but the aches and pains that start sitting in compound interest over time? So the SAID principle, the specific of adaptation of imposed demands, if it's feasible and observational, and we started seeing that with our collective pool of clients, we have a data set that suggests that your body's going to break down if you don't take care of the right things fundamentally from the beginning. So we have to break things down just to build it back up. You've heard these sayings left and right from folks all over the place, and we just take it as a priority. And we're just very passionate about it at the same time.
So what's next for you guys?
What's next? I mean,
facility here in East Austin.
Growing the facility and other offerings and services is definitely a part of the plan. Timeline TBD, and the announcements will be obviously out there real soon. But the priority is just servicing the demand of folks that need the help the most. And whenever they come on in, we're able to grow our team. Obviously, with more hands on deck and resources, you're able to do a lot more. We know Austin is I know it's called the tech hub, not a bash on the tech industry or anything, but Austin is the hidden gem of longevity, functional medicine, alternative therapeutic practices, in my opinion, health, fitness, lifestyle. Whenever people come move here and visit here, even we've pulled folks that are now wanting to wear the red, white, and blue Lone Star of Texas flag. They're like, hey, I moved from this other place. I love Texas. I'm never leaving. They're really shocked of like how health conscious and how open-minded and how proactive in that realm that Austin really is. We want to make sure that Austin continues to live up to that standard. And as a company, we're just going to make sure we keep pushing that standard, that the priority should be the longevity byproduct of results and doing it correctly from the bottom up. And so next steps, I mean, we're going to explore the frontier and see what happens, but there's other details. Not going to talk about it. Can't talk about it.
Not yet.
But the whole city will know, and the whole state will know. And there's a lot of folks that need our help. And ultimately, there's a lot of folks that know that there is a solution. They just haven't found it. There's a lot of folks that don't know that there is a solution. And when they find us, they're saying, "Oh my gosh, I wish y'all existed 10 years ago, 20 years ago." And those are the folks that really need it the most.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. We might need to fact check this, but there's some survey that came out recently with Austin being top 5 in terms of healthiest cities or most proactive, similar to like Denver. I mean, you'd believe if you go out any Saturday morning, you see just everyone running with various running forms, but they're running.
True.
I know we talked a little bit about almost making Austin like a biomechanics thought leader hub in a way. And it's an art hub, tech hub. It's blossoming.
Correct. Yes, there's a diverse portfolio of innovation happening. And I think a priority for folks is, if you don't have your health, you ain't gonna have anything else. Fundamentally, what does that mean? What does it look like? we have the blueprint so far, I think, knock on steel, knock on wood, on it paying off in the next 25 years. We have a pretty good track record. We have a pretty good hunch. We're always changing things, adapting our protocols, our training methodology, nuance. We're always updating our techniques, and we're always staying ahead of the curve just because we can see it. We have great foresight as a scientist, right? I think most scientists are. If you are scientific minded, you can look out 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ahead. And you can start asking just some very smart questions like, what are the deeper implications of what's going to happen to these things that you put in place or do to your body or your company using these factors?
Yeah.
You start backtracking it and trying to put things in place that add problem-solving capacities. You're going to observe a ROI that's positive because you're able to problem solve. Most folks are in the problem-solving space, which I love, awesome, because there's a lot of forward thinkers in there, which is great for us because they always allow us to upgrade our skill set whenever they're asking a deeper question about their body, which is great. But I think in the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to observe Austin being able to lead the charge on that. We're just another factor of being a part of that wave, I guess you say.
Absolutely. And functional patterns itself is something that's like nationwide.
Yeah, functional patterns is actually
International.
worldwide. Yeah, it's international. I can't recall the specific number, but there's probably about 40, 45 facilities worldwide. We have a stronghold here in Austin because it's the capital, so we are the headquarters here in Texas. And the idea is that everyone needs this, and it's going to spread like wildfire once things go in the correct direction like it already has been. And once people find us, they never really leave, which is a kind of cool thing to experience. Like when you find your community of people that are wanting the best interest for you, your health, and the long-term longevity part of your life. Like, I don't know the last time you had someone in your corner that's saying, hey, man, yeah, you got to cut out alcohol because that's what it does with, it ties into cortisol, ties into tight muscles, ties into bad sleep, ties into your digestion being all out of whack. Hey, like, what do I need to do to help you out with that? So that way your core is stronger. So that way you can keep moving and doing the things you want to do. And that way you don't have those headaches. That way you're not lethargic. They're checking in on you every single week like that with our whole diverse team of different backgrounds. You get every slice of the pie for years to come. Whenever people come in, that community that is supported in that notion in their corner every single day, every single week. I mean, you can't really get that anywhere else. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if people want to go to a place where you're always doing cardio, like that's awesome. You can go bang out that sweat and do your cardiovascular output if you like to. We look at it holistically. We have every single piece of the pie layered in, so that way we can help you along anything and everything that pops up.
Got it.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah, so it's holistic, not just holistic body workouts, like, holistic myofascial connect chains, my new favorite word of the day. Right. But it's holistic, like, hey, like you should maybe look at your alcohol intake, you should look at your diet, you should look at your sunlight, all those sort of things you guys teach and check in on.
Yeah, and we've observed this in Austin too, the biohacking community. I think that popped off in the past decade pretty well to give people the, I guess, introductory perspective of an alternative thought experiment, right? They're able to think about, well, is sunlight really important? What is this red light? Is it really going to benefit me? What are these blue blocker glasses? Is that really affected? What's structured water? Why should I even care? Hell, people didn't even think about electrolytes in the way that they do today. I think the biohacking community probably gave another opportunity for people to think outside of the realm of, okay, well, should I do something outside of just doing cardio every day? Maybe should I look into posture training? Hey, you know what? I want to be able to run really fast. Do I really have to lift really heavy weights every single day to be able to do so? Maybe I need to get my running form checked out. Hey, you know what? The shoulder thing that I've had since high school because I played tennis has always been a bother. Should I really take a look at why that's affecting my hip, if at all any? And I think in the future, as we keep opening up that perspective, it's going to allow a lot of people to come in to accept a premise of, hey, I need multiple perspectives. I need all of these things checked off for the ultimate goal of having health be a part of what is wealth, right? In the end game, if your health isn't intact, you're not going to be able to be an asset. You're going to be a liability. Ultimately, when we have clients come in, that's what they're ultimately wanting to do. They want to move pain-free. They want to make sure their bodies are moving, feeling, and is contributing in a strong context to provide for their families, their company, their community. They want to be able to provide more, which is pretty awesome that they want to do more, and they have the ability or the capacity to do more by taking care of their bodies now in this fundamental sense. So whenever we look at all those ideas, I think the biohacking community helped make that another thing that people should look into, right? No different than all the other things that people have talked about back in the day with just simple dieting or simple nutritional intake. Now it's become a bit more specific and digestible, and you can enter at any jump point into your health journey. So that way people have, I guess they can have their own delineation of how to go about that. If people want to start with getting their food on track first and it leads them into our door and it helps them out, great. If people want to come in because of the pain, they want to really mitigate that pain before anything else, that's great. If people are already stressed and they need some certain techniques and other red light implications or sunlight implications or vitamin D implications, that's going to be a priority for them to get them into our door and start to feel and move better, that's great too. Everyone has their own little preference when they come on in, but ultimately when they start coming in, they just never leave. I don't know why.
Yeah. We don't have to dig too deep into it, but I know with red light therapy, we had Cody Krups on the podcast, and he was talking about how it could help with like rehabilitation and whatnot. So I find it very interesting, like with elite athletes, some of the stuff they're doing, you guys actually also have in your facility, be it Valor, red light therapy.
For sure, yeah. The bottom line, whenever people want to recover, there are tools to help speed up the process. And also these are things they can also do at home. So you don't always have to go to like a clinic or, for example, like you can go to your doctor and check in, right? Most people don't want to keep going to the doctor because they typically give you bad news. In this case, if we have tools where they keep coming back in, they're like, hey, I did the PEMF mat that helped me recharge. That felt really great doing
What's
the
that?
It's a pulse electromagnetic frequency. So essentially gives you the correct ion charge into the body. So if your nervous system's blasted to heck, you're stressed, and you're not able to recover or sleep well, the PEMF mat helps you deregulate the corrected balance for that. So the way your nervous system is regulated, you can regulate the hormones a bit better at night or in the morning or throughout the day. So you sleep better. Red light helps with that as well. If you get exposed to the red light, it can help set up melatonin levels a bit better towards the evening time rather than being on a blue lit screen at night. The infrared light also helps with joint soreness, muscle recovery, or we've observed, or the science has observed, that if you have an injury or a tear, it can help with the reparation or the recovery process. And that we're not doctors, so we can't say those implications.
No, but like I said, the practitioners I've spoken with, they have that as their secret weapon.
It just seems like it helps. Again, another tool in the shed that helps some along that journey and helps open up, again, the perspective of what else is out there. That helps folks go to a functional medicine doctor or practitioner that helps them out balance their hormones. They didn't even know they have a hormonal balance, but this idea of, hey, getting this infrared light therapy gizmo, they're like, wow, I feel a little better with how my body feels on top of the training. That's awesome. What else should I be doing with my health? And it leads them to help out with their low testosterone levels. Maybe help them out with regulating, if it's female health, reproductive hormone regulation, it can help out with that. If it's folks that are very stressed and they're like, wow, I didn't know I need to regulate my nervous system. I didn't know that hormones had an effect on that. It lets them take a deep dive into that. It just helps our ability to help them long-term more effectively.
Yeah. So why don't you think more practitioners or more facilities are like incorporating some of this holistic modeling?
You're talking about just fitness trainers or
yeah, like if I go to my Gold's gym, I don't see any of this stuff, right? If I get a personal trainer somewhere,
right,
not working with elite athletes, they don't practice any of this stuff. Or
sure, yeah, I think observationally, everyone works in their own bubble, right? If it works for those folks, that's awesome. I guess what's the catalyst to change would be a better question, right? Because if I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again, and I'm expecting a certain benefit or outcome, and I no longer then receive that, something has to change, correct? I can't just keep doing the same thing. So something might happen where I hear about something, or I experience an injury, or maybe I have something happen to my body. I want to start exploring different opportunities of how to help with that. It may lead them to recovery therapeutic modalities. Then that leads them to like massage. Maybe that leads them into going into cryo or infrared sauna or cold plunging or whatever other else is out there in the Austin community. That may open up the door for, maybe I should look into doing these alternative supplemental things that help with recovery, but it's not in my current fitness place. They may decide to have membership at 2 places, or maybe they decide to bounce to a new place that does prioritize that. I think everyone works in their own bubble, right? There's people that work in tech specifically, and then there's people that work on cybersecurity. It's in this idea of technological advancement, but 2 different areas that eventually can cross over in the future with other innovations that happen. Same thing in the health, wellness, fitness space. I think everyone has their own niche or their own bucket that they want to work in, or their own bubble that's more comfortable, or maybe that's their calling, or maybe just it's the community, right? Eventually, I think observationally, especially in Austin, as the next decade comes on, people want to be proactive with other things rather than just a bicep curl. I think people are going to want to explore their health in a holistic fashion. And again, at our place, we just kind of prioritize the results of what we have in-house that gives them that byproduct and provide the result long-term. Yeah. So eventually, I think everyone comes along for the ride. Like I said, the story I mentioned back in college, I was the last one that had a flip phone. Eventually, I did conform. I got the least sophisticated smartphone, whatever it was. I can't remember what the name of it was. And by that time, everyone had the iPhone 20,000. I was like, oh, I didn't know they even had that. I still stuck with that model. Now I have whatever this is now, and it's very sophisticated. So eventually you get caught up to that curve on comfortability. I just found that I stick to the opposite of whatever iPhone is, and it works out for me.
The Android?
The Android.
Is the Android gang.
Android gang.
Except for the iPads you have in the facility.
Yeah, the iPads for the facility works for Valor tech because it's very effective the way it's calibrated. And we just use Androids for other things.
No, I love it. Well, one of the questions I had going into here is, what do you think is next for the health, wellness, and fitness industry?
I think, me just being a nobody on the ground, just having a big passion to help people out. I think people want to upgrade, whatever that means, whether it's professionals in the health wellness space wanting to upgrade their skill set, their service offerings, the knowledge behind the frontier, maybe AI and all these other technological advancements have given the opportunity to learn about things they may have considered. They just didn't get it validated by the environment till now. I think that's on the horizon. I think also intrinsically for people that work with folks, they want to be able to, if they have their heart in the right place, they really want to ultimately help no matter the cost. So they're going to go out there and explore different things that help provide that. And eventually, I think in the next decade, they're going to want to converge at some point at that. I guess there's like a peak or a crossing point that's going to allow them to be on the same page rather than just, again, just focusing on bicep curls. There's going to be a flip. And I think the pandemic, or whatever it was called, the 4-year cycle of having a health crisis in the world, was able to give people a little flip of the switch and prioritize their health at some capacity. I think it's been speeding up. I think people are wanting to take an initiative into their health. Yeah. I'm not going to dictate how people need to do that. All I know is that in our house, we know how to do it pretty effectively. And I think people in the health wellness space are wanting to recognize that as a priority. So eventually in the next decade, as we've already seen the past decade here in Austin, I think Austin will be the flagship of pioneering or spearheading that project of wanting to get this out to the masses at any capacity. All I know is that we're just a player in that field of being able to do so. But all the folks that I've spoken to in the health wellness space or functional medicine space or the alternative thinking space, if you will, they want that for the community as well. And here in Austin, you have a nice melting pot of diverse individuals that come together with great ideas and great executions, and they're willing to problem solve. So I think fundamentally here in Texas, we're going to have a lot of that play out in the next, it could be less than a decade. I don't know. It's kind of like the stock market or crypto. It's like no one knows if it's going to go up, down, left, right, or in
revolution. It's going to go up. Just hold.
I just know it's just going to go up. So you just got to keep holding on to, the priority of wanting to make an everlasting impact and change on people's lives. Yeah. I think if you're able to do that, things are going to work out. If you don't, you just got to ride the waves and work a little harder to catch up, right?
Well, you're completely right. Maybe it's just here in Austin, but I feel like my generation is really focused on their health. I'm not saying other generations weren't, right? But I think it's the future that Wall-E maybe described. I think humans are good at kind of coming back to baseline. So it's kind of like, oh, wow, the obesity rates are crazy. I think
last time we checked, I think in America was like, and anywhere between 60 to 70% was in the range of not only overweight, but also obese. Yeah. So when I hear that, our job is cut out. We have our work cut out pretty hard for us,
Oh yeah.
which is great though, because we're able to help people understand that doesn't have to be their starting point on walking. Everyone loves to walk. Right here in Austin, everyone loves to walk. Here in major cities, they love to walk. We can be a catalyst in prioritizing how they can walk effectively, walk pain-free, and be able to do so. But I mean, if you can't walk, you can't do much else. And as we grow as a community, family is important. So if you are going to have children, I mean, I don't know about you, but when you look at kids, they are all over the place. They want to walk, run, climb, do all sorts of amazing physical activity. You have to keep up, and you also have to set the standard on understanding that has to be the new baseline.
Yeah.
If you can't walk, and again, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything else.
So for anyone listening that feels inspired to go focus on their health, like what are like some of the top 3 things you tell kind of just the average person if they're listening to this?
For sure. Asking more questions, probably, right? Like what's the purpose or what's the intent of even doing anything that you do? If we're just mindless going about life and we're just stuck in a loop, then I guess there's no reason, no purpose, no intentionality. Okay, I guess you can just not pay attention to this. But if you do want to be inquisitive and really look at the long-term effect of what you're doing in your life, just start asking more, I guess, questions like that, more smart, maybe more heavy, more perplexing questions like that. Like what is it that I'm doing? Why is it that I'm doing it this way? And what are the deeper implications in the next month, year, or 10 years that I'm doing that? Moving in our space, shout out, call out, when you come into Functional Patterns Texas, just take a look at it and ask a question of like, do I see myself being able to do some of these things in the long term? Do I want to be able to stand pain-free or stand really well posturally? Do I also want to have that translate just by simply walking? Do I want to be able to do that when I walk and run with my kids, my family, my dog, my other folks, my other employees, my colleagues, my friends at work? If you're an athlete, do you want to be able to do that after your career is quote unquote over? Most folks, and what we observe, that's the priority. They always come in and say yes, that they tend to want to have that to be the end game. That is the answer they typically give us. And a third thing is reorganizing and rethinking or reprogramming the approach to health, wellness, and fitness. What does that even mean? Right? What does even being fit even mean to someone? Right? I think ultimately it ties back into what does fit mean? What does functional mean? What does efficiency mean? Ultimately, what you do, you want to work not only just by tomorrow, you want to work for days and years to come. So, I guess not being complacent is a way to think about it. If you want to not be complacent in your thinking, you're probably not going to want to be complacent with the work you put into your body or any other aspect in your life. If you can think about doing so, then you're probably going to be okay with not being complacent in the nuance or in the small details that are necessary as the building blocks or the reorganizing or rebuilding the foundations needed to have efficiency or a economy of living in life in the future. We get stuck in the day-to-day and the rut to rut, right? We check in, we wake up, we check out, or go to sleep. It's that same rat race cycle or whatever metaphorical analogy people want to use these days.
Or on the weekend, you go out, you drink.
Correct. Or that was my cheat day. We have to break the cycle. How about that? If you want to stay in the rat race, that's fine, but at what cost? Right? At what cost to your health? At what cost to your family? At what cost to your employer? Or not at what cost to your employees? Ultimately, if we are a collective community that's prioritizing each other to hold each other at a standard of having high-yielding results, finding efficiencies in our systems of day-to-day living, that's going to pay off pretty well. But in order to do so, we have to ask the hard questions. We have to ask the right questions. We have to ask deeper questions, not for just what happens tomorrow, but for the next 10 years. Ultimately, at our facility, big shout out at Functional Patterns Texas, we're taking that into consideration, and that's how we want to help prioritize people, and that's how deep we care. We're not just going to go into what does it mean for tomorrow. It's got to be for the next 10 years. Or I guess if we want to simplify it biologically, it's every 7 years, right? On a cellular process and biologically speaking,
true.
It happens in 7 years. So you have an opportunity to work for 7 years on reshaping and refortifying what that biological code can be. So if we take Evan, it's like, what's Evan 7 years from now? Is he healthier? Is he stronger? Is he happier? Is he still in pain, or is he out of pain? Is he able to upgrade his value systems? Is he able to leave the muck out of his life? Is he able to grab onto the things that make more sense to help empower other people or help people out in their struggles? That kind of sounds like a healthy, happy 7-year version of Evan, right? Mm-hmm. You wouldn't want to look at the 7-year Evan in the future and be like, oh man, oh, he let himself go. Oh, he's not a team player. Man, he's not even a good leader. Obviously, no one wants those characteristics or those attributes tied to their identity or their ego or their ethos or whatever they are, right? If we are going to look at the healthier version of ourselves, just that better version of ourselves starts in 7-year processes or 7-year cycles.
And you're speaking about how like all your cells are kind of replaced over a 7-year, just from a atomic level.
Correct. Yes. And developmental psychology also observationally from a broad template or framework happens in 7 years as well. From 0 to 7, you have the biggest neuroplastic hit up until you hit puberty again, which originally used to be around 14 to 21. Then the prefrontal cortex starts getting fully developed between somewhere anywhere from 21 to 28. When you look at your prime, it's somewhere between 14 and 28, right? So when you look at these pockets of what happens with these neuroplastic developments and boosts in the brain, you don't get that from 7 to 14. You're exploring what you've did or what you've done from 0 to 7. That way you identify with it from 14 to 21, and 21 to 28, you're just amplifying your prime. You're exploring the highest of the highest of executing those skill sets. Then before you know it, you hit 35 to 42, where you're already pretty much settled, or 28 to 35 being settled, whether it's career, family, entrepreneurship, or your meaning or fulfillment in life. Anyhow, so we can go on every 7-year cycle all the way to any pass away, but ultimately respecting that biological fundamental code, we're able to impart that as like a track record journey on, hey, this is the 7-year template. This is the mission in the first year. This is the second year. This is the third year. That way, by that 7th year, they've reorganized what their 7-year code is in 7 years. That kind of makes sense.
So you actually go over that at Functional Patterns, Texas.
In our assessment, initial sales discussion and strategy and introductory sessions, yes, we ultimately have to, because we're not cookie cutter, right? If someone comes in and they've been dealing with pain and issues for 14 years, we'll identify that there was an event or a series of events that kicked off the inflammation, that then kicked off from this slight injury, that then kicked off with something that went wrong at their workplace. And they've just had that sitting in their body for 14 years. And here they are coming up on their next 7-year cycle of being a human. What are they going to do with that? They're going to have to erase, try to problem solve all of the previous information that's stuck in their body. They just can't leave that unaccounted for. You can't just simply work out. You have to look at all the deeper implications of what's happening in your health. We help them track that out, or try our best to identify that as they spend more time in our facility.
Wow. Yeah. So for anyone not in the studio, it's like Benjamin's very inspirational here. I'm convinced. I came here thinking we were just going to talk about biomechanics.
No, yeah. I guess, yeah, the passion and the idea of where this comes from is that if no one else is going to do it and I'm going to have to do it, I'm going to need other individuals that do the same thing. I just so happen to land here in Austin with folks that we're able to attract into Austin to be a part of our team to do so. I just so happen to be blessed and thankful to be a part of a training system that's so sophisticated to impart that standard so strong from the top down, which is why we headquartered what we did here in Texas for Functional Patterns. But even more so, it's like the groundwork is now there. Now we get an opportunity to take a deep breath and now pursue that deeper intrinsic work, the harder, fulfilling work that's now going to come to fruition. Right? We did I guess that analogy is like sharpening your axe for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And then chopping down the tree in 2 hours if you're giving 10 hours what to do. Rather than just hitting the tree for 10 hours, we've been sharpening that axe, looking at exactly what correct angle we need to. Maybe took a couple of practice swings and a couple of odds to make sure that it sliced directly down the middle, not at a deviated angle out to the side and almost cut off our foot. So that when we go to work the next, I guess in those final 2 hours, that's the next 20 years ahead of us. And it's going to be very rewarding where people are able to be like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Thank you for giving my life back. Or thank you for giving me the tools and the deeper implications of understanding my body so that I can impart that to my employees, my customers, my family, my kids, my friends, other folks that I know need help with that. Essentially gives them the catalyst to be able to help change other people's lives. If we're not doing that, then we're not really labeled as an asset. If you're able to do so, then you become an asset within the community. If we're a collective ethos and we're trying to help other people, it makes sense to be an asset rather than a liability, right?
Absolutely.
You don't want to be able to not be able to do that. And fundamentally, they're not fun people to hang around with.
Yeah.
They don't really, I guess they're energy suckers out of the room.
Energy vampires.
There you go. That's the word. Yeah. Ultimately, folks don't want that. They want people to be able to bring food to the table.
Absolutely.
If you're able to do so, you're going to be inspired to do the same thing. That's all we're trying to do is we have that standard pretty high ahead of us, and we've worked really hard on it. And our team continues to fine tune that. We're not easing off the gas. We're just at 80 miles an hour. We have the NOS tank like in Fast and Furious, and we're just looking over like, are you ready to punch? You're like, yeah, just go ahead and unleash the valve.
I love the movie
let's go.
references.
Yeah. Well, people tend to, I guess, jive through metaphorical analogies and stories. So I try my best to do so because I myself can get lost in the weeds going very deep into detail. And I never used to have that. So I love sharing that into conversations.
Well, I know kind of last topic here, you guys also work with kind of younger athletes, right? You work with everyone. I know speaking with you, some athletes that even want to maybe play at an NCAA level, right? So from what you've seen, maybe on the more younger, maybe in the 20s, what have you seen makes a difference between a good athlete versus a great athlete when they walk through your doors?
I mean, I ultimately look at like character and value systems and those kind of things more so than just physical appearance or physical output. Like there could be athletes that are very great versus good. Doesn't mean that they're a great person, right? So they might have great performance. For me, that I personally just don't care so much about that individual having great performance if their character is not that great.
Okay.
I'd rather take great character over a good athlete because you can mold that good into great. You go the flip way, it's a little more difficult to do so, but observationally, I just want to get that out there. But observationally, when we take an athlete that wants to be great, if they are that good, it's doing the nitty gritty things that no one else does. You've heard this mentioned all over stories and podcasts and interviews and after session football games where they talk about this. But observationally, when we see these younger athletes want to be great, they do the mundane thing, the boring thing, the small, difficult thing over and over again.
Karate Kid.
Exactly right. And it becomes a fundamental no-brainer. And you're able to build on that and build on it and build on it. And what you observe is that they are not having issues. Other folks are. So the observation, it's like, okay, what makes a good athlete eventually become great is that missing piece, that missing link of being able to do that thing, that small X factor that no one else wants to prioritize, right? If they have the right attitude, value, character, standards to do so, we can work with that. And we observe that makes them great. Observationally, what makes a great athlete performance-wise to a good athlete, they're doing the correct biomechanical things very well, right? They probably have better golden ratio angles in their movement. They're very, very explosive. But long-term, I think we all see this with sports, right? We can watch any sport, football, the Olympics, track, basketball, and there's always a mindset of like the greatest of the great. They want to do things right fundamentally, and they want to do it over and over and over again without limitation.
Okay.
We can name any athlete that has been dubbed great. We could take an example like Michael Jordan in his prime.
Yeah.
And he was doing the boring thing. He was also able to move really well. He practiced on trying to move well the best that he could, and it apparently showed out on the court. And everyone's like, wow, that's amazing. Today in our facility, we observe that folks that want to be athletes or they want to make that as like a priority for them, observational. I have to go back into the like statistical analysis part. Yeah. When we first started our journey as fitness professionals about a decade ago, the clientele that would come in with, let's just call them ABC issues that were like debilitating or causing them to deteriorate really fast, used to lie in the subset range of like people in their 50s and 60s. Do you know where that is now in the age range?
Younger?
It's people in their 15, 16, 17 young teens to about their early 20s. They're dealing with the blown out back, different herniations, the sciatica, severe knee pain, Oshley's knee syndrome.
Why is that?
Observationally, I can go into conspiracy theory. I can go into what the science says.
Benjamin's take.
We're not doing things correctly or efficiently anymore, or we're prioritizing the wrong things as the thing that we practice most. Again, back to the specific adaptation of imposed demands. If you're going to eat junk food, you're going to exercise only in a certain way. Your body's going to adapt in that way. If you want to become a high-performing athlete and you're doing things in a certain way like everyone else, it's not going to be a surprise that you're developing all these problems or issues, because the sophistications around that are now not like they used to be. I think back in the day, let's say 20, 30, 40 years ago, athletes weren't having the rate of injury like they do today. And I think you're already starting to see a couple of like professional teams that are not prioritizing, say, like the back squat and heavy deadlifts as a priority for our training program, or whatever it is. They're now trying to change that approach a little bit to mitigate injuries or to improve athletic performance in different sectors. What we observe in our facility is that the clientele that come in, these young athletes, they're wanting that help too. They're not wanting to prioritize the thing that got them injured in the first place and really be able to get back on the field and do the good things they do. We're observing that the folks that are in their young teens or 20s, I think is just finally caught up with the environment. It's the food, the malnutrition, it's the lack of maybe information or education that is not being a priority for them. Like understanding sleep is a priority. They're just on their phones all day, more so in this generation compared to our generation. I could go back down to the parenting, right? Parenting, they may not know the information needs to be set in their household as like a priority of like, hey, we can't just eat, let's just say processed fast food every single day. It's like, hey, they need other vitamins and nutrients to help their bodies support the physical demands that they're putting on their bodies. Not even that. I think the athletes that are that young, that are experiencing these problems and issues, are just doing too much, right? They're doing too many sports. Maybe their professionals or coaches that are putting the workhorse demand on them is just too much for them to handle. They're not having enough time to recover. And if they're not having that, I think that's where they're observing it as well. But
and some of them are just early sport specialization. Like the first guest we had on, AC, he works with baseball athletes. His kind of word of advice is play as many sports as you can, like recreationally, just with your friends. Throw the football, get outside. Don't just only do baseball. You see the Tommy John's elbow surgeries that are necessary these days within kids in that, what were we saying, 15 to 20-year-old range?
Yeah, 15 to 25 right now. It used to be that the decade that we observed of having like these blown out backs, knee surgery, all these things, they're starting to trickle down to the young folks now.
Absolutely.
And it never used to be like that. And every 2 years in our practice, it seems like it's shifted every decade down. And so now we are here in 2024. I could only assume, hypothetically, in the next 2 to 4 years, it's going to catch up to the kids that are like between 6 and 8, 6 and 10.
Wow.
Which is pretty scary to think about, but it's like, why is it that we have more kids with these issues and problems? Ultimately, it's going to be everything that we're alluding to, right? But fundamentally, from a sports or movement or exercise standpoint, getting locked into a box or a bubble, again, right? If we're just always doing bicep curls,
just one thing,
this isn't going to lead to a holistic output that is very effective for your athletic performance, meaning you're not going to be able to run more effectively just because you do bicep curls. Let's just say if you're a pole vaulter, just doing stretching. Oh, you did? Okay, there you go. Stretching every single day for 2 hours isn't going to turn you into a more effective pole vaulter, right? Just doing overhead shoulder press over and over and over again isn't going to translate to a three-dimensional component of being able to run very powerfully or be able to box or grapple very effectively. So from a young age, what we observe too, it teaches their own again, right? People get locked into a box. Maybe the kid is only going to do an X sport or a Y sport because the parents only want them to do that. Again, ultimately, fundamentally, kids need to play. I'm not going to go too deep in the weeds in terms of like developmental child psychology and parental advising or anything, but children are meant to play. They should play every aspect of playing, but then whenever you want to specialize or be specific with their training or strength or conditioning of what their bodies need or should be doing, functional patterns comes in. We already have a template in place where we understand these kinetic chains, how they work fundamentally. We can get our kids to stand, walk, run, throw very well as a priority. They could do Muay Thai, kickboxing, wrestle, jiu-jitsu, basketball as an effective means to apply their physical prowess. Should they prioritize doing basketball every single day, 3 hours a day, just so they become very strong or athletic or good at basketball? I think that's where the delineation starts coming out, where it's like, well, maybe we need to take a step back and ask, like, what are we doing to this individual, right? And so as we speed up to our age, in the 20s and 30s and 40s, where we're trying to become physically adept and active, is playing beach volleyball or sand volleyball or pickleball or long distance running every single day for 2-3 hours really the right approach? We should be able to apply and test out like a scientist for these ideas. Like if I want to go play tennis, I should be able to test how well my body is applying my strength training curriculum, if you will, that I spend 10 hours on, where I test it out in a 1 hour setting in tennis. It should give me a high ROI. So when we start prioritizing that on our end, observationally as a fitness program and as a business, we're just seeing people move more pain-free because they're spending more time on the human biomechanics side of going through all the nitty-gritty, layering that in pretty hard for the long term so that they can keep up with their kids to play tennis whenever they decide to enroll them into tennis.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, oh, sorry, little Jimmy, my shoulder's blown out. Oh, my back is blown out. Oh, I can't run with you. My knees hurt. It's kind of a same story we hear with folks coming in. And man, it makes me sad being a parent already. I have a 2-year-old and I have a newborn daughter about to be 2 months pretty soon. And when I start thinking about why I personally came into functional patterns and started prioritizing a holistic human biomechanics specific training approach, is because physically, scientifically, that's how the body is meant to work. We're just trying our best to figure it out. And so far we have things support that we are, which is awesome. And we want other people to do the same thing. But as a community, as a collective, as in the world, if you are going to be a parent, if we are going to come together, we need to have healthy, strong, innovative children. You can't do it if they're broken. You can't do it if you're broken as well, and you can't lead by example from the top down if you're not able to put your money where your mouth's at, right?
Yeah. No, it ties into a lot of the stuff we're working on. A lot of people ask us, like, why don't you just look at golf swings, or why don't you just look at tennis swings? Why are you looking at, compound movements, range of motion? Even some people want us to add, like, looking at a static postural. Like, look, it's like it all builds off of that. Those are the building blocks that then gives you the ROI on your tennis swing or your golf swing.
See, great. And look at that same conversation we were just talking about. People are already starting to become aware of that, or they at least are intrigued, or they're going to have a vested interest to really want to look at that. Mm-hmm. And when they do, that's amazing, because we've already been doing that for almost the past 15, 20 years as like a collective training company. And then us here in Austin, we've been doing that for the past decade. We're like, this is amazing. People are eventually going to start catching on. Like, posture does matter, right? Yeah. Their walking does matter. 3-dimensional understanding of their body should be a priority. Mm-hmm. So that way, when they are using the muscles in their arm that connects to the rest of their body, they're like, I know and understand how to do that very effectively. And I'm glad I did it the correct way, rather than just focusing on the bicep curls over and over again with the elbow tendonitis or the whatever that surgery is called in the elbow these days. Tommy John's elbow surgery. That's where we see where it's going. If you're already talking about how people are already doing that, that's amazing. So I guess my hunch is already correct. Like, in the next probably less than a decade, people are going to start prioritizing that. And that makes us happy, because people are moving, or at least they're starting to wake up to want to move in the right direction. We've just been doing this forever with sticks and bones. Right? We started with just bands and other nuanced equipment. And then we went to being able to use a cable pulling machine, which gives us the most effective, up-to-date ability to translate the training as we need to. We have other things in the pipeline that's going to come out, and it's going to be pretty amazing to see how we can change people's lives with that, because once they experience those benefits, they can feel better. They observe that in real time as well. They're like, man, okay, this human biomechanics, 3-dimensional, multiplanar stuff makes sense. They need data. They need Valor. They need other individuals that have their well-being at heart at that holistic 360 perspective for the long term. I think eventually, and I think since the 4-year event that happened with our health crisis around the world, whatever you want to call it, finally woke people up to be like, do I just want to only walk on the Stairmaster and the treadmill? I might want to look at other things, right?
Yeah, and a lot of them realize, like, oh, life's short. Life could be taken away at any point.
I think everyone can agree we all had or have been in the sphere of influence or circles of having people passed away in those past 4 years, unfortunately, from whatever health circumstances, whether it was happening around the world or maybe it was that time. I personally had that experience with my mother passing away. And yeah, whenever time is short, how your body is able to adapt and be resilient through those experiences. If your body isn't up to arise to that challenge or that occasion, or even like if you're a parent or if you run a company or if you want to be a high performer in your sphere of influence and really help people and they depend on you and you can't rise to the occasion when things get really rough or things go not according to plan. That's what we observe, like in our practice, we hit the nitty gritty pretty hard. You can't escape it. You have to look in the mirror. You have to look at the camera. You have to do it right over and over and over again. And it's difficult work. But on the other side of it, you're like, man, I'm now more resilient, not only on a nervous system, biophysiological level, not on just a physical aptitude level, but mentally, like intrinsically, as you're a person, you're able to be like, I can do this. I can work through the suck, right? I know most folks, I mean, you may even get this a little bit of a gist, but in the military, when they talk about that mindset, mind over matter, they can overcome situations, embrace the suck. I respect that to a degree, and most folks always think that I used to be in the military, just speaking from that angle. I should have tried that out before I did this, and maybe we'd have been on a different track.
You got a dog tag necklace on.
Oh no, that's it. Well, yeah, that's funny enough, right? No, that's from a church program called Better Man. It just goes back into what is a man and bettering the man. But
well, I think from this is very clear wealth of knowledge here with Benjamin, Functional Patterns Texas. If someone wants to get involved, follow you guys, maybe they're not even in Austin, how can they find you?
For sure, on Instagram, it's very simple. You just gotta search up FP Texas, or better yet, just go at Functional Patterns. Just start searching that on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, any other social media outlets. I think even Twitter. I try to stay off as much of social media platforms as I can.
Yeah.
On our website, specifically here in Texas, it's just www.functionalpatternstexas.com, and Google, just search up Functional Patterns Texas. Simple.
I'm sure we'll be doing another one of these as well.
For sure.
Leading the way here in Austin, Texas. So Benjamin, appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thank you.
100%. Thank you for having me. And we look forward to continue helping people and make an everlasting impact and change on their lives, Evan.
Let's do it.
Awesome.